Welcome to Watching the Horizon. I'm Jake. A lot of you out there are new to the prepper world, and I welcome you. In fact, I've got a video officially welcoming you, so I hope you go check that out. What are you prepping for? Now, I don't mean that in the traditional sense that you have seen on Facebook saying, what are you prepping for? No. It's a little bit different. Something in your mind clicked. There was a moment where you're like, I should probably start worrying a little bit. You're thinking to yourself, do I need to buy extra food? Do I need to buy a gun? How much ammo do I need? What will I do if this country gets, bombed by Russia or North Korea or, whoever? And you've reached that point. So what was the trigger for you? Was it something you read on Facebook? Was it the election of President Trump? The reason why I ask is because it's actually fairly important to at least identify it. Be familiar with this moment because it's going to tell a lot about you and who you are. The reason that matters is I met an individual who felt as you do. There was a point in this person's life, he did not give me permission to talk about him, so we're gonna call him Joe. And Joe lived in a pretty liberal part of the country, highly populated, lots of progressive types of mentalities and attitudes. Something happened for Joe that decided that, you know what? I'm a little concerned. Actually, he was a lot concerned, and he ended up making some pretty drastic choices in his life. And this is sort of where we met because our stories were similar. He basically got rid of all of his stuff and he decided to up and move. And that's what I did. He did it before me though. And that's kind of where we met. And it was a situation where I wanted to reach out to this person and be like, hey, tell me about, how did you do it? Sort of where the rubber meets the road. What was the experience like? What were some of the troubles that you ran into? I was hoping to gain from someone else's experience for the journey that I knew was imminent in my own. They got out of that area and they ended up moving to the outskirts of a fairly large city in the Midwest. And, it's beautiful out there, lots of country. Big Amish community over there. Talked about that a lot. Joe didn't really have any skills, but he knew that he wanted to get away from where he lived currently, which was like right smack dab in the middle of it all. So he moved literally halfway across the country to the outskirts of a big city, which I question that decision right there. And I think after talking to Joe, he expected something to happen by now. He thought that the balloon was going to go up by now. His assessment was that the threat was considerably more imminent. And so it's sort of a knee-jerk reaction, really. I'm not quite sure what it was. He hasn't told me kind of the full story. Personally, I think it has to do with the precursor to the election, that whole campaign, how it was run. There was a lot of superstitious talk prior to the election, a lot of blood moon stuff, religious kind of based, if that's your thing. However, this person, I don't know, maybe it was a combination or something, or maybe he was reading his tea leaves, and one day he just up and moved the family, put all of his stuff, gave it to a family member where they were at and kind of put it in storage. So here you go. And they moved to the outskirts and they ended up renting this tiny little apartment. They could barely afford it. They had to get brand new jobs and a brand new city. They started over. I mean, it was a significant move, obviously. Now, here's the trouble. The trouble is that whatever disaster, whatever incident that they were expecting, and I don't even know that they know what they were expecting, they just assumed something was going to happen, didn't happen. At least not to the level that they felt was worthy of evacuating their current city. They ended up moving back. they left. At some point, something happened with their job, and it just sort of an opening came. Both him and his wife weren't really happy. I mean, they were happily employed where they were before, which is great, and then they sort of settled on something. They didn't, I don't feel like their heart was really in it. It was more of an early bug out evacuation / forced. It was all, it was all based in fear. But what was lacking was conviction. There wasn't any kind of dedication to the idea of prepping. They were literally bugging out what they thought to be just was ahead of whatever that event was. And then when the event didn't happen, wow, that was expensive. If you've ever moved, especially halfway across the country, they brought their stuff with them. They didn't put it all, they moved their family. They were in place when I moved to the Ozark area, and I, kept in touch, and you could just tell that they were really they were disappointed in their decision. Personally, I believe it's because they, didn't really believe it. It wasn't part of them. It wasn't in their gut. It wasn't something that they had really discussed with each other very well. It wasn't something that they really kind of planned out. They were not preppers before. They're not preppers now. But they made this big, drastic decision. After a while, they're like, okay, this sucks, not happy, hate my job. They both said that about their jobs, and they're like, okay, peace out. And they end up moving back to where they came from. And it's the same story. They're still afraid. There was no benefit. There was no gain. First of all, I don't think they moved to the right location. They just swapped out one populated area for another populated area. You just became new in a different city. You're just new family, new people in new jobs, new cities, you didn't actually make any kind of change. They didn't practice any kind of prepping skills. They didn't do any food storage. They just felt that just not being where they were while some sort of event happened was going to be good enough. I'm not quite sure what their plan was. It didn't work, and they ended up moving back. So I think that before you start making any rash life choices, you need to be honest with yourself and identify, why are you prepping? What was the moment? Was it an inflamed comment on YouTube, some rant on Facebook that sort of connected with you, and all of a sudden now you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, that could totally happen, and who knows, whatever. What was it for you? Identify it, find it, and ask, is this really worth it for me? Is this really who I am and who we are? Prepping, it's more of an attitude. For some people, they're going to say it's a lifestyle. Sure. For some people it is. There are lots of preppers who don't have a prepping lifestyle, but I think they're legit preppers. It's an attitude for sure. It's how you look at the world. It's how you look at a situation. It's how you look, more importantly, above all else, how you look at yourself. And you recognize that you are responsible for you. If you go to the grocery store and there's no more food in the grocery store, whose fault is that? That your family is going to go hungry. It's not the grocery store's fault. It's your fault. And that's really difficult, I think, for a lot of people to believe, because for most of your life, the grocery store has always been there. It's never not been there. You haven't known a world without a grocery store. You've never had to chop your own firewood before. Some of you have. Some of you have had to make sure that you don't freeze to death in the middle of the night. You had to grow your own food or else you were going to go hungry. Some of you have done that, but most of you haven't. The vast majority of you haven't. All you've ever done is go to the hallway and find the little dial or hit the button, and you know what? Magical heat just comes out of the little holes in the wall. But what if that stopped working? Whose fault is that? Whose fault is it that you couldn't keep your family warm and safe? Now, we could extend this, and I know that a lot of you are already starting to type. I can hear you. Burglar comes to my house. breaks in, puts a gun to my head, blows me away. I'm dead. According to my own logic, that was my fault. Yeah, it was my fault. Now, I'm not saying the other guy doesn't have any culpability in the matter, but you know what? If I can't keep my property safe, if I can't move to an area that doesn't have that type of criminal element, and I understand no place is truly 100% safe, but you hear what I'm saying here, that if I live in a bad area, or if I don't take proper precautions and lock my freaking door, or put an alarm system on my house, yeah, some dude tiptoes into my home, doesn't have any kind of resistance whatsoever, and is able to sneak up on me and kill me. Yeah, it's his fault that he killed me, and he's going to have to answer to that, either to the authorities or to God. But guess what? I'm still dead. And yeah, it's kind of my fault. I didn't take the proper precautions. I didn't foresee that event could have occurred. Or if I did foresee it, I didn't take the appropriate action to either A, stop it from occurring, or B, at least not make it easy for them to do it, so that at the very least I would be woken up, that some sort of alarm would go off, that I would at least have a fighting chance, that I didn't die in my sleep, that I didn't die on my knees with a gun to my head, that I didn't die without at least trying to fight back. I'm responsible. It's me. I am the captain of my ship. I am responsible. You are responsible for you. Now, not gonna lie, I go to the grocery store. I buy my food there. I don't slaughter my own animals. Am I willing to do it? Yes. In fact, I'm trying to learn how to do it myself. It's a skill that I feel is important that more of us learn how to do. Be real with yourself. Where's that moment that you realized that, click, it's different now? What I thought was okay, the direction that we were going, whether it be politically based, or maybe it's religious, or maybe it's just, you're standing in line at the bank and all of a sudden, like a bolt of lightning, something just hits you. I don't know. But find that moment. Be honest with yourself. Don't make the same mistake that Joe did. He spent a lot of money to spin his wheels. And in the end, is he really any better off for it? I mean, I don't know. Maybe he's grown as a person. Maybe it built character or something. But as far as getting himself out of the path of danger, no. Like I said, he wasn't a prepper before. He's not a prepper now. All he did is move halfway across the country, and then he ended up not liking it. And because whatever event caused him to move, whatever fear got into his head didn't manifest itself. He's like, what the heck am I doing here? Took him and his family back. And he's right where he started, no better off. Anyway, just, it sounds a little bit fluffy, which I'm sure is going to, cater to the type of crowd that I'm talking to, as far as you new guys. How real is this? Be honest with yourself. How real is it? Do you see yourself doing this long term? Or are you just reacting to something that happened in the news? For me, it was something that happened many years ago, and it wasn't necessarily a light bulb, although it definitely came on slowly over time, and it kind of weighed on me, sort of an awakening, a moment of clarity, if you will. I planned for it. I didn't just drop everything at that moment and I wasn't gone that weekend. It took me some time to make the move, to get out of the city. I wasn't able to do it just immediately, but I did do it. And I planned for it. And I don't know how you're going to do it. And it can be different and be okay. It's just, for me, it was a decision that clicked sort of in my core. It changed how I thought. It changed me as a person. Personally, I think for the better. I appreciate you watching. And, if you've got any questions about my journey, or if you think that I'm just big fat jerk. That's cool. Tell it to my face or in the comment section of YouTube. Please don't tell it to my face. Again, thanks for watching, and just be sure to keep your eyes open.